The Tellurian assembly chamber had been carved from a single mountain on the moon of HFY, and for 9,000 years its acoustics had shaped the speech of empires. Whispers carried, shouts shattered. Lies, the old saying went, simply refused to echo at all. Ambassador Vance Holloway stood at the human podium and listened to 14 species explain, with great patience, why his world no longer mattered. The speaker of the hour was a Dravani, 3 meters of pearl gray hide and 4 amber eyes, each one rotating to a different witness. Its voice came through the translator as something between a flute and a sermon. Findings are conclusive, the Dravani said. Human industrial output has not advanced in measurable terms across the last 60 standard cycles. Human military presence beyond the Sol perimeter is negligible. Human colonial holdings are sparse, undefended, and economically marginal. The Assembly therefore moves to revoke Earth's protected species designation and reclassify the human species as a Tier 4 developing culture, eligible for resource arbitration by founding members. Murmurs rolled through the curved benches. The Vrenic delegation, seated low and to the right, did not bother to hide its pleasure. The Vrenic ambassador, a serrated reptilian thing called Chiast Ver, leaned forward and folded its claws in a gesture humans had learned meant appetite. Does the human delegation wish to respond? Every eye in the chamber turned to Holloway. He was a small man by galactic standards, 63 years old, gray at the temples, dressed in a charcoal suit that had been mended twice at the left cuff. He had served Earth's diplomatic corps for 41 years, and in all that time, no one in this chamber had ever heard him raise his voice. He stepped forward. He set both hands on the podium. The chamber waited. "I have served as Earth's voice in this assembly for 11 of your cycles," Holloway said. His tone was conversational. "In that time I have heard our people called barbarians, called accidents, called pests. I have heard you debate whether our music constitutes language. I have heard one delegate, who is in this room now, propose that our oceans be drained for industrial salt." The Dravani speaker did not flinch. The Vrenic ambassador's amusement deepened. "I have responded to all of it," Holloway continued, "with patience, with proposals, with trade offers, with cultural exchanges, with apologies when apologies were demanded. I have been, I believe, an exemplary diplomat." He paused. He looked slowly at each of the 14 delegations. "Today the Assembly votes to remove the last protection my species enjoys under your law. You will frame this as administration. You will tell yourselves it is procedure. The Vrenic Imperium will, within a standard month, move warships into human colonial space, and the rest of you will look the other way, and you will tell yourselves that too is procedure." The chamber's acoustics caught his voice and carried it cleanly to every bench. "I will not argue against the motion. I will not file an objection. I will not request a delay." The Dravani speaker's 4 eyes converged on him. This was not the response the procedure expected. "Ambassador Holloway," the speaker said carefully, "do you understand the consequences of declining to contest?" "I understand them perfectly," Holloway said. He picked up the small leather folder that contained Earth's formal arguments, 3 years of legal preparation, 400 pages of trade data, 28 cultural witness statements. He closed it. He set it down on the podium. He left it there. "Earth withdraws its presence from this assembly," he said. "Effective at the close of this session, the human seat will remain empty. The human flag will be taken down. We will not return when summoned." He stepped back from the podium. "Vote however you like. We were not listening." He turned, and he walked the long aisle toward the chamber doors, and the acoustics of 9,000 years carried the sound of his shoes against the stone, and not one delegate spoke, because the chamber that did not echo lies was, at that moment, echoing something else, and none of them yet had a name for it. The doors closed behind him. 3 weeks later, the Vrenic Imperium crossed the human border. Hian Drift was not a strategic colony. It was a mining outpost on a tide-locked moon, population 9,000, defended by a single orbital platform older than most of the people stationed on it. Its governor, Inez Marchetti, was a former agricultural engineer who had taken the post because her wife wanted to see the rings of the gas giant from a kitchen window. The Vrenic fleet arrived at dawn, local time. 42 cruisers, 18 carriers, 2 siege-class hulls that had not been deployed in living memory. The Imperium had not come to take Halcyon. The Imperium had come to make a statement, and statements required audiences. Every broadcast frequency in the system was jammed except one, the one the Vrenic themselves had opened, so the galaxy could watch. Governor Marchetti stood in the operations center beneath the platform and watched the tactical display fill with red. She was 44 years old. She had never commanded a battle in her life. She had read the emergency protocols twice, the first time when she took the post, and the second time that morning when the long-range pickets had gone dark. Her communications officer, a young man named Idris Akafer, looked up from his console. His hands were shaking. He was trying very hard to hide it. "Governor," he said, "they're hailing us. Open channel, full galactic broadcast." "Put it through." The face that filled the screen was Vrenic, but not a soldier. A noble. The plates of its skull had been gilded, and its lower mandibles bore the ceremonial scars of a house lord. It spoke human standard slowly, the way an adult speaks to a child it intends to strike. "Human Governor, I am Lord Captain Kel Ver of the Imperium Third Wing. Your assembly has released you. Your Earth has abandoned you. Surrender your platform, your colony, and your population, and the Imperium will demonstrate the mercy of new masters." Marchetti looked at the screen. She looked at Idris. She looked at the photograph clipped to the edge of her console, her wife, laughing, holding a cat that had died 2 years ago. She keyed the broadcast. "Lord Captain," she said. Her voice was steady. She did not know how. "My name is Inez Marchetti. I'm the governor here. I want to say something to your audience if that's all right." Kel Ver made the Vrenic gesture for amusement. "Speak, human. Let the galaxy hear your last." Marchetti nodded slowly. She looked into the camera, past it, through it, at every alien face she imagined watching from every world that had voted 3 weeks ago. "You think you've found cattle," she said. "You looked at our colonies and our trade ships and our quiet diplomats and you decided we were soft. I want you to remember something when this is over. Remember that we let you think that. We let you for a long time. We have our reasons and you will learn them and you will not enjoy the lesson." She turned to Idris. "Send the burst." Idris's fingers moved over the console. A single encrypted packet, no larger than a love letter, fired toward Saul on a relay no Vrenic scan would catch. It contained 3 words: "They came here." Marchetti turned back to the screen. "Lord Captain, my answer is that I will not surrender this platform. I will not surrender my people. I have 9,000 civilians under my care, and I am going to spend the next 6 hours making sure you remember every one of them." She cut the channel. She turned to her officers. There were 11 of them in the operations center. None of them were soldiers, a geologist, 2 engineers, a schoolteacher who had volunteered for civil defense. "All right," Marchetti said quietly. "We're not going to win, but we're going to make them work for it and we're going to make sure the recording lasts. Idris, keep the public feed open. I want the galaxy to see what they paid for." The Vrenic fleet opened fire at 0620. The platform held for 6 hours and 11 minutes. Marchetti rerouted power 3 times, ejected the reactor twice, and rammed a damaged cruiser with the platform's own service shuttle. She killed 400 Vrenic Marines before they took the lower decks. Idris died at his console with the broadcast still running. Her last transmission on the open channel was 8 seconds long. "Tell Earth the dogs have come for the cattle. Tell them the cattle were never the cattle. Tell them." The signal cut. The Vrenic Imperium broadcast the footage on every channel for 3 days, as a warning. They did not understand that on Earth, the same footage was playing, and no one was watching it as a warning. They were watching it as a starting gun. Beyond the orbit of Pluto, where the sun was a bright star and nothing else, there was a region of space that did not appear on any galactic map, not because it was hidden, because the galaxy had never thought to look. The Vrenic had charted the human system twice. They had counted Earth's defensive platforms, mapped the lunar shipyards, catalogued the orbital industry around Mars. They had concluded, correctly by their own metrics, that humanity possessed a respectable but unremarkable system defense and no meaningful capacity for offensive deep space warfare. They had not looked past the heliopause. They had not thought to. The Uit cradle stretched across a volume of space larger than most planetary systems, and humanity had been quietly filling it for 90 years. Admiral Thomas Kavek stepped off the shuttle ramp onto the dorsal spine of the ENS Pale Horseman and felt, beneath his boots, the soft vibration of a power plant the size of a small moon coming alive for the first time. He was a tall man, 62, with the kind of face that had been carved by long watches and longer silences. He had spent the last 23 years of his career commanding a desk in a building that did not exist, signing orders for ships that had no registry, training crews whose families had been told they worked in deep system mining. He walked the spine of the Pale Horseman slowly. It was 6 kilometers long. The galaxy's largest warship, a Dravani siege hull, was 900 meters. Captain Renata Volkov fell in beside him. She was 41, dark-haired, and had commanded the project's first prototype to its destruction 6 years ago, riding it down into a brown dwarf to make sure no scan ever recovered the wreckage. "Reactors at 60% and climbing, Admiral," she said. "Spinal mount will be live in 11 minutes. Crew is at full posting. The other 5 are running their light-ups now." Kavek nodded. He stopped at the observation blister and looked out across the cradle. 5 other shapes hung in the dark, lit from within by the slow blue burn of waking reactors. The ENS Cassandra, named for the prophet no one believed. The ENS Carthage, named for the city Rome erased. The ENS Lazarus, named for the man who came back. The ENS Iron Veronica, named for an engineer's grandmother. The ENS Long Memory, named for what humanity had and what the galaxy had forgotten it had. 6 ships, 6 answers. The signal from Hian Drift had arrived 11 days ago. 3 words: they came here. Kavek had read it standing in his office, alone at his desk. He had read it once. He had folded the printout. He had placed it in his inside pocket. He had walked to the lift and ridden it down to the launch bay, and he had not slept since. Volkov was watching his face. "Permission to speak plainly, sir." "Always." "Are we sure about this?" Kavek turned from the blister. He looked at her, and for a long moment his face held nothing at all. "The Assembly thinks we are a Tier 4 developing culture," he said. "The Vrenic think we are cattle. 23 other species think we are a footnote. Renata, what we are about to do will rewrite every page of galactic history that anyone has ever read." "That's not what I asked, sir." Kavek's mouth moved. It was not a smile. 9,000 people died at Hian Drift, he said. A governor who had never fired a weapon in her life held a station against a Vrenic battle group for 6 hours because she believed Earth would answer. I am Earth's answer. I am sure, Renata. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Volkov nodded once. She turned and keyed her wrist comm. "All hands, this is Volkov. Light her up." The Pale Horseman came alive around them. Every corridor woke. Every gun mount cycled. The reactor climbed from 60 to 90 to 100% in the time it took Kavak to walk back to the bridge, and when he stepped onto the command deck, the holographic strategic display was already burning with the position of every Vrenic ship in known space. A young lieutenant, Idris Akafer's cousin, Kavak realized, with a small private knife of grief, looked up from the helm. "Admiral orders." Kavak looked at the display. He looked at the red dots clustered around Hian Drift, still broadcasting their conqueror's footage to the galaxy. He looked at the Sirius relay, where the Vrennick second wing was massing for the next push. "Set course for Sirius," Kavak said. "All 6, cradle exit in 12 minutes. We are going to introduce ourselves." The lieutenant's hands moved over the console. "I Admiral, course for Sirius, all 6. The quiet yards opened, for the first time in 90 years, and let their children out. The Vrennick second wing numbered 204 warships. Its commander, High Lord Kaast Ver, the same Kaast Ver who had folded his claws in pleasure at the assembly 3 weeks earlier, had positioned his fleet in standard wedge formation at the Sirius relay, ready to receive what he expected would be a human diplomatic envoy begging for terms. He had drafted the terms himself. He was looking forward to reading them aloud. The long-range sensor officer's report arrived at 0411 local. High Lord, translation signature at the edge of the relay. 6 contacts. Mass profile. The officer paused, recalibrated, paused again. High Lord, the mass profile is inaccurate. The system requires recalibration. Display it. High Lord, the system insists each contact masses approximately 400 million tons. The bridge fell quiet. The largest warship in Vrennick service massed 30 million tons. The Dravani siege hulls, which the Vrennick considered grotesque, massed 60. Display it anyway. 6 shapes resolved on the tactical plot. Kaast Ver looked at them for a long moment. He had been a soldier for 91 cycles. He had personally led the assault on the Threvani breakaway. He had commanded 6 fleet actions and lost none of them. He understood, looking at the plot, that he was not looking at warships in the sense his species used the word. He was looking at infrastructure. He was looking at the kind of object a civilization built when it had decided that the next war would be the last one, regardless of which side won. "Hail the lead vessel," he said. His voice was steady. He was proud of that. The reply came back in human standard, calm, unhurried. "Vrennick Command. This is Admiral Thomas Kavak, Earth Naval Service aboard the Pale Horseman. You are in violation of the Halcyon Drift Accords. You will stand down your weapons, surrender your command staff, and withdraw your forces from human space. You have 90 seconds to comply." Kaast Ver considered, briefly, the possibility of compliance. He considered the political cost. He considered what his emperor would do to his family if he surrendered without firing. He considered what these 6 ships would do to his fleet if he did not. He weighed the two. The math for a Vrennick noble was not difficult. "All ships," he said, "open fire." 204 Vrennick warships fired their main batteries at the 6 human contacts. The Pale Horseman did not raise shields. It did not maneuver. The energy strikes arrived, washed across its hull, and dispersed into a field humanity had built specifically to swallow the entire spectrum of Vrennick naval armament. The kinetic rounds, the heavy slugs the Vrennick considered their primary killing weapon, struck a layer of reactive armor 70 meters thick and stopped, embedded, like pebbles in clay. Kaast Ver watched his entire opening salvo achieve nothing. Admiral Kavak's voice returned on the open channel, still calm. "That was your reply, now mine." The Pale Horseman's spinal mount fired once. The weapon was not energy. It was not kinetic in any sense the Vrennick understood. It was a controlled fold of spacetime, a hairline crease propagated along a precisely calculated vector, and where it touched a Vrennick warship, the ship simply ended. There was no debris. There was no flash. The vessel was, and then it was not, and the volume of space it had occupied collapsed back to vacuum with a small, almost polite implosion. The Vrennick flagship sensor crew watched 28 cruisers cease to exist in the first volley. The second volley took 31 more. The third took the remainder of the heavy line. 90 seconds after the engagement began, the Vrennich's second wing consisted of 46 lightly armed corvettes and a flagship whose admiral was starring at a tactical plot that no longer had any red on it except his own ship. Admiral Kavek's voice returned. "High Lord Kaast Ver, your fleet is destroyed. Your remaining ships will power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. You personally will surrender to the Pale Horsemen within the hour. You will be tried for the murder of 9,000 civilians at Hian Drift. Do you understand these instructions?" Kaast Ver looked at the plot. He looked at his shaking censor officer. He looked at the small ceremonial blade on his belt, the one Vrennich nobles carried for the ending of their own lives in the event of dishonor. He understood the instructions. He understood that the galaxy he had woken up in that morning was not the galaxy he would die in. He keyed the channel. "Admiral Kavek, the second wing complies." The footage of those 90 seconds, captured by the Vrennich flagship's own sensors, transmitted live to the Imperium for what was supposed to be a celebration broadcast, was already playing on every receiver in the galaxy. Every civilization that had voted 3 weeks earlier saw it. The assembly chamber on HFY went quiet for the second time in 9,000 years. And in a small apartment in Geneva, Ambassador Vance Holloway watched the broadcast on a tablet, alone, and finished his tea. He set the cup down. He picked up a small black cube from his desk. He put on his coat. He had one more meeting to attend. The Tellurian assembly was not in session when Holloway arrived. He walked through the great mountain-carved corridors anyway. The Dravani security attendants made the gesture for recognition and did not stop him. The Ishari archivists, the oldest species in the assembly, watched him pass and exchanged the slow eye blinks that, in their tongue, meant "we have been waiting." He entered the chamber alone. The benches were empty. The human seat was still empty, as he had left it. The leather folder he had abandoned on the podium 3 weeks ago was gone, taken, he supposed, by some clerk who had not known what else to do with it. He walked up the long aisle. He climbed the speaker's dais. He set the small black cube on the podium. Then he sat down on the steps, and he waited. They came one at a time, as he had expected. Ambassadors who had not been summoned. Ambassadors who had heard by whatever channels their species used that the human had returned. The Ishari first, 3 of them robed in pale silver, their long throats inclined in the gesture that did not translate cleanly but meant something close to "we acknowledge the weight of what is coming." Then the Dravani speaker, all 4 eyes converged for once. Then the Threvani delegation. Then, slowly, others. When the chamber was a quarter full, Holloway stood up. He did not approach the podium. He stayed on the steps. The acoustics carried his voice anyway. "I am not here to give a speech," he said. "I am here to give you a choice. Before I do, I am going to play you something. I would ask that no one speak until it is finished." He reached up and touched the black cube. It played the final communications of the Vrennich's second wing, not the footage, the audio, the internal channels, the Vrennich bridge officers in their own tongue in the last 90 seconds of their fleet's existence, the High Lord's order to fire, the censor officer's report, the slow, climbing, unmistakable sound of a professional military discovering, in real time, that it had spent 100 years preparing for the wrong war. It ended with Kaast Ver's voice. "The second wing complies." The cube went silent. Holloway looked across the benches. "For 60 years, he said, my species has known that this assembly views us as ornamental. We have known that the Vrennich Imperium views us as inventory. We have known that 12 of the 14 founding species view our existence as a clerical inconvenience to be managed. We have known these things, and we have said nothing, because we were not yet ready to say what we are saying now." He paused. He looked at the Ishari delegation, because they, of all the species in the chamber, had ears old enough to hear what he was about to say. "My species is not strong, ambassadors. We are not the strongest species in this room, and we are not the strongest species in this galaxy. There are powers older than us, wiser than us, and in some respects more terrible than us. We know this. We have always known this. He stepped down from the dais. He walked slowly to the human seat, the one that had been empty for 3 weeks. What my species is patient. And what my species has built, over 90 years of being underestimated, is the capacity to make patience expensive. He did not sit down. He rested one hand on the back of the seat. 6 ships destroyed 204 Vrenic warships in 90 seconds. We have 41 more like them. The quiet yards are still building. The reason I am telling you this is not to threaten you. The reason I am telling you this is so that you understand the choice I am about to offer is a real choice and not a performance. He looked up at the empty speaker's chair. Earth offers the Assembly a new charter, written by us. Equal vote for every species, regardless of age or industrial tier. No protected status, no tier system at all. Any aggression against a member species is treated as aggression against all. The Vrenic Imperium is given 30 days to disband its current government and submit to civilian rule, after which our fleet will take whatever steps are required. He paused. Alternatively, the Assembly may decline the charter. We will withdraw again. The next time we return, it will not be a diplomat at this podium. The chamber was very quiet. The eldest Ishari rose from her bench. She was 4 meters tall, silver-skinned, and her species had been signing treaties when humans were still grinding wheat. She inclined her long throat. "Ambassador Holloway," she said. Her translator carried the words with care. "My people accept the charter. We will be the first signatory." The Dravani speaker rose next. The Threvani, the Kelesh, the Yevsai themselves, hosts of the chamber, 9th. By the end of the session, 12 of the 14 founding species had signed. The Vrenic seat was empty. The 14th, a small, cautious species called the Oveni, asked to abstain. Holloway granted it without comment. Then he walked out of the chamber again, and this time he took the human flag down himself, folded it, and carried it home under his arm. The Vrenic Emperor, when the news reached him, did not disband his government. He declared war. The Vrenic Emperor was a creature called Sovkal Ver, and he had ruled the Imperium for 140 cycles by the simple method of killing everyone who suggested he should not. He had inherited the throne from his sire by personally severing the old emperor's head in front of the High Court. He had expanded the Imperium across 9 star systems by a combination of starvation, treachery, and the occasional surprise nerve gas. He was not by any measure his own species applied, a stupid creature. He understood power. He understood leverage. He understood the long mathematics of fear. He understood, watching the Halcyon broadcast on repeat for 3 days, that the human ships had destroyed the second wing without taking a single hit, and that this was a strategic problem of a kind no Vrenic emperor had ever faced. He also understood that to disband his government would be to die, not at human hands, but at the hands of his own court, who would not tolerate a surrendering emperor. So he chose the third option. He rallied a coalition, the Threvani breakaway remnant, the Kelash-aligned houses who had always resented the new charter, 3 pirate kingdoms in the lower spiral, a pair of opportunistic mercenary fleets who scented profit in chaos. He did not need to win, he reasoned. He needed only to make the cost of the human victory unbearable, and the Assembly would force a settlement. The coalition numbered 900 warships. Admiral Kavak took the human fleet into Vrenic core space on the 3rd day of the coalition's mobilization, before half of it had finished assembling. The campaign lasted 11 days. The histories would later call it the Long Knife. On the first day, the Pale Horsemen and the Carthage destroyed the Vrenic home wing at the outer shipyard, freeing 12 million slave laborers in the orbital industry and capturing the production records of the Vrenic naval program. Kavek broadcast those records in full on every open channel. The galaxy learned in detail what the Vrenic had been building, where, and for what purpose. The Kelash-aligned houses withdrew from the coalition within the hour. On the third day, the Lazarus intercepted the Threvani breakaway fleet and offered terms. The Threvani commander, a young officer named Resval, had not wanted the war and accepted the terms within minutes. She turned her ships against the Vrenic core fleet the next morning. On the sixth day, the Iron Veronica and the Long Memory moved on the Vrenic capital world of Verkes. They did not bombard it. This, more than anything else, broke the Imperium. For 900 cycles, every conquering fleet that had appeared over Verkes had come to destroy or to enslave. Every Vrenic child learned this in their first year of education. The mathematics of conquest were the only mathematics that mattered. To appear over an enemy capital and not destroy it was, in the Vrenic understanding, impossible. There was no doctrinal slot for it. There was no protocol for surrender to a force that did not seem interested in your annihilation. The Iron Veronica and the Long Memory parked in geostationary positions above the capital and began broadcasting, on every Vrenic frequency, a single repeating message in fluent court Vrenic. The Earth fleet is not here for your people. The Earth fleet is here for your emperor. Stand down your defenses, remain in your homes, and no harm will come to you. Continue the war, and your emperor will be the only target. The message played for 2 days. On the 8th day, the Vrenic High Court convened in emergency session and voted, by a margin none of them had thought possible, to depose Savkal Ver and offer his person to the human fleet in exchange for cessation of hostilities. The Emperor's own guard refused the arrest order. The Emperor, cornered in his throne room, opened an open channel to the Pale Horsemen. He spoke human standard. He had learned it in secret over the previous decade, against the moment he might need it. He had not expected the moment to arrive like this. Admiral Kavek, he said, this is Savkal Ver. My court has betrayed me. My fleet is destroyed. I will not surrender. I will die in this room. I wish to die speaking to the species that ended me. Kavek took the channel personally. He was alone on the bridge of the Pale Horseman when he answered. He had asked Volkov to step out. Emperor, Kavek said, his voice was not unkind. I have a different offer. There is no offer I will accept. Hear it anyway. The Emperor, who had not been spoken to in that tone since his sire died, found himself listening. You ordered the slaughter of 9,000 civilians at Hian Drift, Kavek said. By every law your species or mine recognizes, your life is forfeit. I have the authority, the means, and the will to end it from this chair. Then end it. I am offering you, Kavek continued, the chance to live. A long silence over the channel. On what terms? The Emperor said at last. You walk out of that throne room unarmed. You stand trial before a court of your own species with human and Ishari observers. You testify in full to every order you ever gave that violated galactic law. If your court convicts you, you serve your sentence under Ishari guardianship. If they acquit you, you live out your days as a private citizen. No assassins, no exile fleet, no human reprisal. My word and Earth's on it. Why? The Emperor said. The Vrenic translator caught something in his voice that the bridge officers would later argue about for years. Why would you offer this? Kavek was quiet for a moment. Because 9,000 civilians at Hian Drift deserve the chance to live, he said. And because we are not what you taught your children we would be. Stand down, Emperor. Walk out of the room. Let the galaxy see what the choice looks like when it is offered. On the 11th day of the Long Knife, Savkal Ver of the Vrenic Imperium walked out of his throne room with empty hands, was taken into custody by his own high court, and lived to stand trial. He was convicted. He served 23 cycles in Ishari guardianship before dying of natural causes. In his final interview, Asked by a young historian what he remembered of the war, he said only this: "They were never the cattle. We were never the wolves. We were children playing at a game whose pieces we had not understood." The galaxy, watching, took note. The new charter was signed in the Tellurian Assembly Chamber on a morning of pale autumn light, 6 months after the long knife ended. 31 species signed. 11 new ones had been admitted under the charter's open membership clause, including the Threvani breakaway, who had been denied a seat for 60 cycles, and the freed slave worlds of the former Vrenic Imperium, who chose their own ambassadors by lottery. Earth signed as a single member, equal in vote and standing to every other. There was no human throne, no human speaker, no human protectorate. Ambassador Holloway, when offered the chairmanship of the new Charter's Enforcement Council, declined and recommended an Ishari archivist named Say Nyla for the post. She accepted and chaired the council for the next 40 cycles and was remembered as the wisest of her line. The human flag was raised again over the empty seat that had stayed empty for 3 weeks. It was a small ceremony. Holloway had asked for that. Afterward, in the long stone corridor outside the chamber, a young Ishari archivist, barely 100 cycles old, which for her people made her a child, caught up with Holloway as he was leaving. She was nervous. Her silver throat feathers were trembling. "Ambassador," she said, "forgive me. I am compiling the new histories. I have a question that is not in any of the official records. I would not ask except I do not know who else could answer." Holloway stopped. He turned. He smiled at her gently, the way one smiled at one's grandchildren. "Ask, child." "Why," she said, "why did Earth wait so long? 90 years building those ships in secret, 60 years of insults in the assembly, 3 weeks of silence after Hian Drift. You had the strength to end the Vrenic at any time. Why did Earth wait?" Holloway considered the question. He looked out through the corridor's tall windows at the moon of HFY, at the curve of its horizon, at the small distant point of light that was the human delegation ship, waiting to take him home. He thought about the 90-year-old shipyards and the engineers who had died of old age never seeing what they built. He thought about Inez Marchetti, who had read the emergency protocols twice. He thought about Idris Akafar at his console, hands shaking, sending 3 words to Saul. He thought about Savkal Ver, walking out of his throne room with empty hands. He thought about every Vrenic child who would grow up under a charter that did not allow what had been done to Hian Drift to ever be done again. He thought about the leather folder he had left on the podium 3 weeks before the Halcyon broadcast, the 400 pages of trade data, the 28 cultural witnesses, the proposals. He thought about how he had hoped, right up to the last moment, that the chamber would simply listen. He turned to the young Ishari archivist. "Because," he said, "the strength to end a war is not the same as the wisdom to begin one. We were not waiting to be ready, child. We were waiting to be sure. We were waiting until the question of whether to use what we had built was a question we could answer without losing ourselves in the asking. The Vrenic gave us that answer at Halcyon Drift. We did not want them to. We would have waited another 90 years to be wrong about them. We were not. And the saddest thing I will tell you in this corridor, the thing you may write down if you wish, is that the galaxy mistook our patience for weakness, when patience was the only thing keeping the galaxy alive." The young archivist wrote it down, exactly as he said it, in the small bound book she carried. It became the first line of the new galactic history. The galaxy mistook our patience for weakness, when patience was the only thing keeping the galaxy alive. Holloway walked out into the autumn light. His ship was waiting. He went home,